solutions that I have researched and what have been shown to be the best solutions for reunifying families and ensuring that the child is going to be safe while being in the home, and there aren't going to be any further issues that will have to be brought back to the child welfare services. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. So, like I said, I will be talking about family reunification strategies, and I'm Asia St. Ange presenting this. When a child is removed from his or her home, the circumstances are usually dire. This is when a report has been made and an investigation has began, and typically the child will be in imminent danger, whether from physical, sexual abuse, or extreme neglect. The child can be around drugs or alcohol, or the parent could be a strong abuser who is having a really bad time and suffering. The parent or caregiver is dangerous or could even be in danger, like as in domestic abuse cases. And then the parent or caregiver has mental health issues like severe depression, isn't able to take care of the child. Obviously, that's something that, like, where rehabilitation will be very important. So the goal is to reunify the family. This is legally mandated by federal law, and the United States holds high importance on the family system and allowing freedom within one's family. As you probably know, corporal punishment is legal in most states, and parents and caregivers are given freedom to raise children however they see fit, but the child does have to go to school, and then there are limits to the child's safety, and that's why the child welfare system was created in the first place. So the problem I identified is that the child welfare system workers are overworked and underpaid. Most social workers, children's divisions workers, etc., have more workload than they can handle. And how can they keep accurate tabs on every child and their workload? If a child is removed from his home and put into foster care, is a worker going to be able to upkeep the relationship with the child and the family while the court proceedings are ongoing? And oftentimes, court proceedings can last up to 2 years. And how is the worker able to keep up with this child as well as many others while these slow processes are going on? So, under the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, families usually receive up to 18 months of family reunification services. And at this point, the child is either reunified or parental rights are terminated, and the child enters permanency planning services like adoption or placing them with another guardian or something like that. So, if the goal is to reunify the child with his or her family, how do we know when it is safe? And if the child is removed because he or she was in a dangerous environment, then the focus should be on rehabilitating the parties involved, bringing forth necessary punishment, and working toward bettering the home for the child. How does the child welfare system go about ensuring the child's safety and well-being while also reunifying the child with his or her family? So when a child is removed, he or she will be placed in foster care while permanency outcomes are being determined. So the child will be put in a home, and the court as well as the workers will determine whether the parent is fit to take the child back, or whether other permanency outcomes need to be decided. So in 2000, about 57 children leaving foster care were reunified with their families, about 17 were adopted, 14% left with relatives in permanent guardianship, and 2% aged out of the system. Statistics show per year that more than half are usually reunited. So there are some effects or things that could affect permanency outcomes. So race or ethnicity. Children of color make 33% of the United States population, but 55% of children of color involved in are the children involved in the child welfare system. This could affect foster placement, because foster parents, if you remember reading anything from our brochures that we made, they do get to discriminate on the children they will take in. Single parent households could affect permanency outcomes if the parent is fit to take care of themselves and a child, and then what further involvement would be needed to ensure that the parent is still fit. And then the age will also determine some outcomes. So, is the child going to age out of the system? Is he or she too old to be adopted? And then parental substance abuse. Has the parent attempted to change or control their abuse, and has it worked? And then parental incarceration. Why is the parent incarcerated, and how long will it be? So the workers have a lot of responsibility in these cases, and they do take on huge caseloads. So they must decide. They're the deciding factor in foster care placement as well as monitoring. They are responsible for obtaining the relationship with the family and monitoring the progress that the family is making in rehabilitating themselves. And then they're responsible for offering reunification services and following up. So that's like rehabilitation, counseling, drug testing, um, different like specialty courts if the parent is involved in that. Then, as well as that, the worker must attend court and testify or know what is happening with the case. They will be a huge contribution to the case. And then eventually the child will be placed in home or parental rights will be legally terminated. If the rights are terminated, then the worker continues with the permanency placement. And if the child is placed back in home, then the worker has pretty much done their job by law. So an issue with that is the worker should continue the relationship even if the court orders the child can be placed in home. How can they do that? They can continue having a relationship with the family, and it doesn't have to be invasive. They could just stop by and make it more of a like personal relationship rather than a I'm watching out for your child relationship. They could have in-home visits. They could work on crisis prevention with the family and be like a first responder to the family if something does happen. They could do checkups with the family and have the family come in and see everything's going. They could stop by the school, speak with the other adults involved with the child and the family. And then they could also check the home and make sure it is fit for children. So some things that I read that workers have a perspective on is why it is difficult for them is the process typically takes 2 years. So sometimes finding a permanency outcome within 18 months is a lot to ask, and the process is very long. The child will go through a lot, and the parent may lose motivation. There's a lack of training and expertise to make these huge decisions. A lot of times they're just told to reunify the family, or that's their main goal, so they just do that or try to do that without really knowing what's going on. And then the system's reaction to rare tragedies, like if a death were to happen while the child was in foster care, the system gets a huge backlash from that, and so they have to be really careful. And then the huge push to reunite families can be really stressful. So according to Talbot, there are two main strategies used while determining whether to reunite the family. So there's both the life model and the problem-solving model, and I won't go into these too depth, but the life model is basically more looking at the child and how their life is going to turn out when they are reunified with their family. And the problem-solving model is more the worker and the worker determining what's going to be best for him or her and what's going to get the child safe while also ensuring that the worker has done the best job rather than focusing on the child. So the best solutions that were found. So after reading all this, there were some solutions to better the issues that the workers face and the backlash that they get from the society. So family-based services rather than individual. So rather than taking the child away from the parent and making the parent go through rehabilitation and counseling, having them do it together so the parent can still see the child and stay motivated while the child is seeing the parent's progress and knowing that the parent hasn't just abandoned them in those cases. And then out of home care. So begin with small visits rather than just putting the child in the home when they haven't seen their parents or had long visits with their parents for a while. And then slowly raising the amount of time the child spends at home. And then once the child is fully at home, ensure the worker is continuing care and continuing those relationships that I spoke about earlier. And then lastly, in home visits, so visiting the home to ensure proper safety and care is being met. And I also touched on that earlier as home visits and checking the safety of the home and just stopping by and letting the child know that you're there, and as well as the parents who maybe are struggling.